Well, I have to say, today is unlike any other day. Well, every day is unlike any other day. This is Kathleen Gage with Plant-Based Eating for Health. And I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing somebody I heard on another podcast show, was incredibly impressed with what this young man had to say. And I say young man because anything to me under 60 is young. So there you go. And I know he's not anywhere near that, but he has accomplished so much in his lifetime. And my guest today is Monk Coleman. I recently read his book. I highly recommend you get his book. We'll put the link in the show notes down below. He's not only an author, he's an inspirational speaker. He's a transformational coach. And what I really like is that he's a pro bodybuilder natural, and he's vegan. That's the reason I wanted him on the show, because he has the whole package of what I want to bring to my community to share what it takes to live the kind of life that he lives, and especially when you find out about his past. So Monk, great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
Absolutely. Well, I know that actually you and I have some of the same past, which I've been sober for 37 years, and I want to just hit the ground running with that. I know that you were running and gunning for a lot of years. You live in the Bay Area in Oakland, and you got involved in drugs and alcohol. So tell us about that time in your life, and then let's move into how you got out of that and how you became a vegan.
Yeah. So, as children, we are given a program as children, and a lot of times, depending on where you grew up or the circumstances that you grew up in, the dysfunction in my case, you have a real different way of looking at life and what you're capable of and what your limits are and aren't. And then you get to a point where you basically accept what they are, and you move according. So you almost fall into a space where you've given up, and you said, this is the only road I can go, because this is what not expected of me, but this is what I'm supposed to be doing in my situation, coming from my background, right? There really aren't any other options at this point, because I accepted that programming. So when I fell into that, and also what's the crazy part is not only did I have the dysfunctional programming, but I also had the religious programming. And those two things contradict. So you have this religious programming where you do no wrong, and then you have the stuff where you really experience this dysfunction where it says everything is wrong. Mm-hmm. So you mix those together, now you got somebody that's scared for doing wrong, but is doing wrong and seeing wrong the whole time. So it's really confusing, right? So you go to church and you taught how to live, and then you go home and you see how not to live. So at one point in my life, I was doing both of these things. I was living religiously because I was in fear. And then when I got done being in fear, which I still had that fear, that residual fear in me, even when I was in the streets, I got tired of walking on eggshells, and so I went to the dysfunction. So I experienced all of it. So all this pre-programming that I had was as a kid, I now experienced the church, experienced the streets, and now where do I go from here? So when I was in the streets, I was like, if I'm going to go to hell, which they said, if you do wrong, if you keep sinning, you're going to go to hell. If I'm going to go to hell, basically, I was like, I'm going to go on my own terms. So I really went from the straight and narrow to anything goes.
Right.
And that's when I got linked up with certain people and started doing certain things and introduced alcohol in my life and started to sell cocaine and do everything because I was tired. But at the same time, I still had the underlying fear that was programmed in me from church.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. What church did you grow up in? Because I grew up as a Lutheran, and we had the same kind of premise of that if you do wrong, you're going to go to hell. And if you do right, you're going to go to heaven. And I had conflicting beliefs about that. It's like, well, what if I don't believe in hell? What if I don't believe in heaven? Because life is hell on earth, really, as far as I was concerned at that point. So what religion did you grow up in?
It was, I think we grew up in a couple. I think we used to go to a Pentecostal church, very strict, and also a Baptist church.
Okay.
But the Pentecostal part was super, super strict. It was like if you had it was all the way in type of religion, right? So you have to do this or else. So when I got, like I said, when I started to get older and the rules that, there's certain rules you have to live by, hormones started kicking in and I started to feel a certain way and being attracted to, women and these rules. I'm like, I really can't do this. So I'm just going to go ahead and dip out of this religious thing and do what I want to do. And that's what happened. So when you have this inner conflict, it's uncomfortable. It's uneasy when you're not aligned with what you're supposed to be doing. And you don't want to deal with it. So you start pushing all this stuff down. And you start pushing it down at a young age, right? Suppressing and repressing these emotional things and all the stuff you don't want to deal with. And the best way for me to do it was drinking. I was introduced to alcohol as a teenager, and it always made me feel okay. It's almost like a false sense of presence, right? So when I'm there, I'm not in the past anymore. I'm not in the future anymore. I'm there 100%, but it's done through drugs. So right. You're going to have, on the back end of that, you're going to have the down when you come off of this drug. It's going to swing back the other way. And then when it does, and you don't like what that feels like, you do it again. And here comes the cycle, right? So to feel, and the more you need to feel just comfortable, to not have that anxiety, to not have that thing that you don't want to deal with going on, the more it takes. And the more you repress, the stronger it gets. So it hits back harder every time you suppress it. So it has to be expressed at some point. This pressure builds up like an earthquake. So it might be an outburst. It might be me a violence. Mm-hmm. It might be whatever it is, but it has to release some of this pressure. And then you start pushing down again. You start pushing down again. And it just, at one point, it got to the point where I'm in my late 30s and I'm just like, what is it all about?
Right.
Like, why? What is life about? I got the cars, I did this, I got the women, I got all this stuff that I thought was going to bring some sense of peace into my life. And it was not there. And I still had to self-medicate. And I still had, what was lacking was the healing process. And we know now that, trauma can be passed down through generations. And you don't even know you need to heal from something. You just know it doesn't feel right. So you're trying to get rid of this feeling instead of leaning into these emotions that you have to deal with.
Absolutely. And you really don't know what has impacted the way you view the world, because when I was running and gunning, I ended up on the streets, and it was like, now when I see a homeless person, and especially an older woman who's just like carrying her bag with her, and I look at that and I go, but for the grace of God, there go I. And, it's amazing how you went from that life to writing a book called Love Over Fear. And this book has such incredible information. I highly recommend people get it. You've got quotes from some of the great masters, living and deceased. Wayne Dyer, Maya Angelou, she's one of my favorites. When I read her book, Why the Mockingbird Sings, Why the Caged Bird Sings, that was such an opening for me, because she had such in a way, a dark past, and yet she transcended that and became such a force to be reckoned with and an impact on so many people's lives. How did you go from running and gunning, being on the streets, doing whatever you did to get that next drug, drink, woman, whatever it was? How did you go from that to now you're married? You are now speaking to groups about transformation, about meditation, about prayer, about love. I mean, your shirt, love is currency. How does one do that?
Well, it got to a point, and it's in the first part of the book that you read. It got to a point where it seems like the universe is always speaking to you, but when you don't listen, it just has a way of speaking a little louder. It has a way of just like, really wake up. This is what's going on. You have to make a decision. Either you're going to live your purpose, or you're going to check out. So all these things that were happening to me, a lot of things happen along the way. I ducked prison many, many, many times thinking I got away with something, but we all know you get away with nothing. Mm-hmm. It's all recorded. The energy you're putting out is always going to come back. So I got to a point in my late 30s where I just found out that my daughter was on her way. This is my 6th child. I just found out my daughter was on, and the next day I wake up from a night of partying and I'm urinating blood. So now, on top of all the stuff that I was already dealing with, now this is what I got to deal with. So this was a point where I said, I have to do something different. Even though I couldn't stop immediately, a few months down the line, I forced a stop. But then I didn't know how to deal with the emotions that I was dealing with. I didn't know how to sober. I didn't know how to do it. So now they're coming up very strong, right? What is it? Carl Jung that said, what you resist persists, right? So now I have all this stuff that I can't push back down, and I have to deal with it. I didn't know how to do it. I was chain smoking cigarettes. I needed to do something with myself. It's such a big part of my life was now missing. Like, this is what I used to do. Now it's gone. This is how I got my good feelings. It's gone now. What are you going to do now? So I don't know how meditation came into my awareness, but I'm like, well, I'm going to give this one more try. And I was literally like, I'm going to give life one more try. I tried it all. Nothing worked. It seemed like every time I got to a point where I thought I was going to be okay, the goalpost would move every single time. So I just sat down and I started meditating. I looked it up and sat down. I didn't know what I was doing, but what people don't understand is you don't have to know what you're doing. Get present, see what comes up. It's not about forcing anything out. It's not about sitting there with a clear mind. It's about allowing this stuff to come up, allowing it to process, seeing what's there, right? When you sit down, you're going to see what's there. And a lot of times it's scary. And that's why people don't want to continue to sit down when they sit down. Oh, my mind is too busy. No, it's not. You're just finally listening to your mind.
Right.
You're finally paying attention to what's coming up instead of trying to avoid it by your addictions, your social media, your TV, whatever it is you do to avoid. Most people can't sit 5 minutes without doing something, right? If you turn off everything, all the stimulation around you for 5 minutes, people will start fidgeting, moving their legs, feeling like they're anxious. 5 minutes. So we don't deal with anything anymore. We don't deal with our emotional traumas. We have too many distractions, so much stimulation. We're overstimulated. So to get quiet is crazy, right? Which it's actually the opposite. We're living crazy. And to get quiet is being normal. So luckily at this time, I wasn't way into social media or any other thing. So when I sat down, I'm just like, I'm there. So when I kept sitting down, what happened was every day I sat down, I kind of felt like I accomplished something, right? For one. And I knew that something was happening because all this stuff was coming up and I was actually dealing with these things. I was sitting I was being scared. I was allowing myself to be scared, sitting with whatever comes up. So I said, this is one thing I'm going to do. You know, I tried the streets for 20 plus years. So I can give this a shot. I could sit down every day and give this a shot, right? I'm not going to stop after a week or two. I'm going to continue to do it because, for one, I'm going to kill myself if I continue to drink and I don't know what else to do. So I continued to do it. And what happened was the healing process started to happen. At first, I was really angry because I felt like a victim. I can't drink anymore. You know, I just, the victim mentality. Like, why me? Why do they get to continue to live that lifestyle and not have these, negative things happen, but why me? But I kept sitting down and I kept going through it. And I got to a year sober and I'm like, wow, and then at that time I was like, I don't think I need these cigarettes either. So I'm going to go ahead and throw these to the side as well. So what happened was I started to feel different. I started to feel like compassion for people I never felt compassion for. I was still angry at this point. Still, I was short, just like, yeah. Even when I got with my wife now, before we were married, she always called me like the angry black man because I was short. I was angry. I was like a little dog, just like, right? All the time because I was still trying to heal and deal with everything that was going on inside me without my crutch. But as I continued forward, I started to feel different. I started to act different. Even my mom noticed, like, I'm like, he's really, like something's going on with him. What happened was I was starting to move back to who I was, which is love, right? So the more you move back to who you really are, the more your life will express that.
Interesting. And I want to remind people, this is Kathleen Gage with Plant-Based Eating for Health, and I'm talking with Monk Coleman, who is the author of Love Over Fear, and it's a guide to peace and purpose. And you have a chapter in here on meditation, and what I like what you said about that is it doesn't have to be just sitting quietly for 5 minutes. You could be lifting weights, you could be running, you could be cooking, you can be doing other things, but your mind kind of leaves and you go through a healing process. So I really appreciate that you said that, because a lot of people get really they get crazy around the whole thought of doing meditation. I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. And it can be very, very simple. We don't have to sit and do mantras or anything. So as you were going through this change, and other people started noticing it, when did you realize you talked about energy and the energy that we surround ourselves with. When did you start looking at what you were consuming besides the drugs and alcohol, but the foods that you were consuming that encouraged you to change the way you were eating too?
So this is things that happen so organically. I think we really overthink things. Mm-hmm. So even with my meditation, I never looked up meditation and go, okay, what is it supposed to do for me? Because it shows up different in everybody, right? So it was experiencing it for the first time without any thought of what it should do, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. So I didn't look it up and go, what am I going to get out of this? I didn't. I looked up, how do you do it? And I just sat down, right? So all this stuff was happening and I didn't have any preconceived notions about what it should do. So 3 years into it, I wasn't thinking about being a vegetarian. I wasn't thinking about being a vegan. I didn't know what a vegan was. So 3 years into it, I'm sitting at a restaurant in Oakland, Jack London Square, and I'm eating, and no meat looked good on the menu, right? nothing. And it was like one of them Black Bear diner type restaurants where everything is really heavily meat based. So I seen a vegetarian omelet. So I ordered that. No meat on it, no nothing, just a vegetarian omelet. And the person, my friend that I was with said, "Are you a vegetarian?" And I answered yes, right? So this is that subconscious reprogramming. So the whole time I'm sitting, I didn't realize what it was doing. But like I said, you're moving back to that place of love. And even in your diet, if your diet reflects love, it doesn't reflect violence. So when I was starting to move back, that question was asked me at exact time when I was ready to hear it. See, people's like, that's crazy, but it's not crazy, right? Because most of our living is done on a subconscious level. So our life, we act out subconsciously more than consciously. So this is that program. So I'm starting to change my whole subconscious program. And that came with the diet. So when I said yes to that, I knew, for one, I wasn't going to eat meat anymore. Immediately, because after I left that restaurant, I started looking stuff up, like bodybuilding, vegetarianism. I was like, it's gone. I don't know why, but it's gone. I don't know why I answered it that way, but I did, and I know I meant it. And that was over 8 years ago, right? So I started doing this, and I also had to look up, why did I say yes to this? And when I looked it up, it made so much sense. It says you were making a connection to all life, and you do not want to do harm to other life. Never thought about it like that. But now it makes sense, because most of us cannot see our food killed and slaughtered and then eat it. There's a disconnection there, right? And it's on purpose. They don't want us to see the process.
Right.
They want us to eat this beef, whatever that is, or, whatever you're eating. There's a disconnect there, and it comes at a very young age. So I'm being reconnected energetically to this being. And I was like, okay, that's good. I still didn't know what a vegan was, but I started, from doing that research, I started seeing vegan pop up, and I didn't know what that was. So I continued to eat not meat. I continued to eat, not check for milk or eggs, right? I was still eating eggs, thinking I needed some kind of animal protein,
right?
Thinking ignorant, right? Thinking that there was no harm done in eating the eggs. Chickens just have eggs, cows just have milk. That's how disconnected and ignorant we are as a country. We don't even think about that stuff, right? Oh, a cow has to be pregnant? A cow has to be pregnant? Or what do they do with the baby? Mm-hmm. Right? So going in my vegetarian diet for a while, and then I seen a video on the egg process, and I seen a video on the milk process.
Right.
And as soon as I seen that, I'm like, I'm done. I said, I thought I was doing no harm, but I'm still contributing to this violence, and I don't want that in my life. And then little by little, I made the connection with the clothes that I wear and the products I use. And I'm like, this is crazy.
And how long has it been since you've been vegan, 100% vegan?
Over 6 years.
Okay. Yeah. For me, it's been 2.5 years, and actually coming up on 3 pretty soon. And I'm going through that process of when I buy clothing, I look at the label. I read labels on everything now, cosmetics, whatever it may be. And when I started, it was simply for health. I was getting inflammation, and I decided to give up animal and dairy just for, I think it was a week, to see if it worked. Well, I had been working in the pet industry, and one day I had this big aha of how out of alignment I was. And now I realize that the cruelty just, it transcends virtually everything. And what would you say? Because to me, my whole mission right now is to raise awareness without passing judgment on people, because I was 64 when I went vegan. And I look at that and I go, it took me till I was in my 60s before I made the change. Why would I expect other people to do it any sooner? And yet I realize how cruel it is. And energetically, with what we're putting in our body, we're taking on that pain, that anger, that fear. And I believe that's why the world is in such a world of hurt, is because of all that we're putting into our body. So how can you share with somebody if they're interested, but they just think that they can't do without meat, they can't do without dairy? What is your process for raising awareness with somebody? Besides your book, of course.
It comes back to the program. I mean, we are given everything: your name, your religion, if you were raised in church, your diet, everything. Think about it. The first thing that most of us ate, we were really broke, but we would eat, chopped up little hot dogs. Mm-hmm. When we started eating solid food, we're eating the carcinogen and about 20 different animals in one meal. And we don't understand how this affects us, right? So perfect example, my daughter, and I was eating meat at the time. I took her to, and kids are connected already. They already know. We just force it on them until they're disconnected.
Right. So
I'm at Pollo Loco, and I'm told her, she's 3 years old. She's also a vegan now too. She's be 13 this year. And I said, eat your chicken. And she said, chicken? You mean the chickens that walk around? I didn't even know what to tell her. Right? She was making that connection to a living being, looking at the stuff that does not look like. She just heard the name chicken and was like, I'm viewing this chicken walking around. And I didn't say anything to her. I said, just eat your chicken. That's how I did it. I didn't know what to say. Because if I would have said, yes, the chicken that walks around, she would have said, I don't want that. Right? So for you, after you made the connection, you did it for health. When we stop putting these energies into our bodies, we start to get mental clarity. We start to make the connection. And then for so many people, it's health reasons. And then it's like, oh my God, now they're awake because they're not putting this energy into their body no more. They're thinking clearly. And the disconnection, they start to make a reconnection. And now it's ethical. Now it's like, oh my, I can't believe I did this for so long. It's unbelievable how many people went that direction just because they started to leave this out of their system. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. We start to move back to that connection. So for people that are not vegan, like I didn't go vegan until I was let me see, what am I now? I'm 51 now, 44, 45, 44, 45. And I can't go, look, you should be doing this.
Right.
Right. And even with my own family, look, you need to be doing this just because I made the connection. I think the biggest impact we can have on society is showing up the way we should show up.
Right. Right.
I've had so many people ask me about it. Like, I am interested in this. How do you do this? Right. Anything that's forced upon somebody, they're going to push back. So I don't even force my beliefs on people. I live my life and try to be the best example I can be. And people come to me. The energy that we give off, just like if you have a preacher that's standing outside of a football game saying you're going to go to hell, you're not going to end up going to that church. You're not. You're going to push back. You're going to push back. But if you have a preacher standing outside of a football game that says, hey, stop by sometimes, we'd love to have you here, you're more likely to go to that church than the guy telling you what's going to happen to you if you don't. Right? So when I give my information, when I give out any information, even if the topic comes up, and I'm not trying to force anything, but I'll give information from time to time. But I have to be super aware of what kind of energy that I'm delivering this information, right? If it's out of judgment, even if I don't say it's out of judgment, they're not going to receive it the way they would if it's out of love. We got to understand that people are where they are. I'm going to meet you where you're at, and I'm going to give you this information from a loving place without judgment, because I've been there before.
Absolutely.
How can I judge you when I did this most of my life?
Well,
right?
And that's the thing. It's just like with drugs and alcohol. It's like, how can we judge people who are still in the grips of the disease and they're desperately trying to get out? And I remember years ago when people would say, oh, if I drink, I die. If I drink, I die. And I used to say, oh, I wouldn't be that lucky. I would live to torment other people. I would live in my own hell. Because it was a very dark place that I was in. I was a blackout drinker, ended up on the streets, passed out in snow. And I mean, just crazy stuff. Very angry drunk. And I look at my life today and it's like, I have the tools today to do it differently and to share it. And like they say, it's attraction rather than promotion. And in the area that you live in, there's a lot of cities where there are what are called food deserts. And there are, unfortunately, it's easier to get a 6-pack of beer and a pack of cigarettes than it is an apple or a tomato or whatever it may be that's going to be healthy. What are you doing? I know that you had talked about the fact that you are working to educate people on better ways of eating. What are you doing within your own local area to raise awareness around how people can eat healthier? And it actually will give them a better quality of life than going down and buying the local McDonald's, for example.
Yeah. So, at one point I was doing vegan homeless feeds. And what's amazing is we used to have to duck the police because it's illegal to give out food.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy. One time we're sitting there and we're in West Oakland and we're giving out food to these people that are homeless, and the police drove by and we were hiding like we were selling drugs.
Oh my gosh. Hey, I've got a tomato for you. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
I felt like I was selling drugs again. Like we were hiding from the cops, just trying to give people food and clothing, right? So we were doing that. And the thing about the food deserts is they're always in certain communities. And we have to understand, people have to understand, like my personal experience is different from your personal experience just because we showed up here looking different, period, point blank, right? And we have to understand how society, now I understand that I'm not a limited being. I was just given these limitations, right? So when you intentionally set up neighborhoods for failure, if you're not awake, you're going to just fall into that. You're going to conform to that environment. Like I said, the programming is for real, right? You don't see certain things in other neighborhoods because the program is different.
Right.
So when you're a small child raised up and your food options are the corner store, you're living in poverty, you see prostitution, drug selling, drug dealing, and violence every single day. Mm-hmm. What kind of program is that creating? You don't know how to eat right. It never crossed your path.
Right.
Healthy eating. Right. I used to live in West Oakland and I used to, after my lifestyle had changed, and I would eat a bowl of just raw vegetables. And my next door neighbor came up one day and was like, "What is that? Like, what is that? Like, literally, what is that?" It's crazy.
Wow.
So these food deserts, they don't even understand that they are food deserts. They don't understand the significance of liquor stores on every corner, and everything that they're seeing is normal. right? So if you're not aware of it, how can you make the change? So it's us for us. And my friend Kat, the one you said you see me with, has a thing called Heal the Hood. And you go into these inner cities and you have speakers and you talk about healthy eating and give away fresh produce. And you have different people talking about different things. So usually when I speak on the meditation part of it.
Nice.
Because I know that's the foundation. See, everybody's on a spiritual path, but everybody doesn't know they're on a spiritual path. You have to realize that that's what you are. And once you realize that, right, you're going to start to move different. We don't know we're on this path. We don't go, okay, I'm on this path now. Now I'm on this path. No, you just recognize that you're on this path. So it was my foundation now. So my foundation, like I said, moving back to who I am, we all were produced out of love, right? There's nothing outside of us that we can't do. We are, I like to say, God in a drop. We are complete and whole. So when you start to move back to who you really are, which is love, then your whole life starts to reflect that, including your diet, including what you do for a living, including how you treat people, including how you treat your significant other and your children, how you show up as a father. Everything changed. Everything goes from selfish to selfless.
Right.
Now you're trying to give what you have, what you know you are now. Now you're trying to give away this love, knowing that you can give it away as much as you want. It's never going to take away from what you have.
I love that. I love that.
So this is how I'm moving through life now. Every interaction is that of how can I bring my best self? I don't care if it's in the line at a store. I don't care if it's just in passing. Your light is bright and you want to share it with everybody you come in contact with, whether it be over the internet, whether it be at the coffee shop, however you show up. We have to understand that what you bring can change someone's life. That simple smile, like I said in the book, a smile can change someone's life. A smile can save somebody's life that's thinking about committing suicide, that thinks the world is a dark, ugly place. And you just give them that little bit of love and that hope, and they go home. It's like, it's not all bad. So we got to understand and we got to take responsibility of how we move through this life, right? We got to check ourselves. We have to constantly be in a state of self-reflection. Right. How am I showing up every day? And that's why I have so many practices I do in the morning to get me going on the right trajectory. So I can leave the house in a place where I'm full. My heart is full. I'm ready to give it away. I'm going out. I'm stepping out on purpose. Right. Purpose every single day of every single minute. And when I find myself in the low vibrations, I can notice that and do something to change that.
Well, I definitely want to talk about your morning process because I think morning processes are so important for laying the foundation. And I want to remind people that this is Kathleen Gage with Plant-Based Eating for Health. And I'm talking with Monk Coleman, who is the author of Love Over Fear. And it's a guide to peace and purpose. And it's a real easy read. It's got short chapters where you can actually read it from front to back, or you can just open it up to a page and we've got the collective. That's the next thought and acts of service. I love that. I was at the grocery store recently, and I actually walked up to one of the young men that was putting items up on the shelf, and I said, I just want to thank you for what you're doing. And he stepped back and he goes, oh, thank you. I mean, because I know that they don't hear that enough, and those little acts can make all the difference. And now, before we talk about your morning process, let's talk about your bodybuilding. How long have you been into bodybuilding? And you are known as a natural vegan bodybuilder. You're being sponsored by a green company. Talk about that, if you would.
So I was contacted by that company. I wasn't competing at all before I was contacted by that clean machine. Mm-hmm. So what happened is he gave me a direct message and he goes, how would you like to be sponsored by us? And I'm like, what kind of question is that? So I was like, yeah, I would like to be sponsored by, I loved what he's talking about. His company was built out of love. And 6 weeks later, I was on a plane going to Texas competing. 6 weeks later.
Oh my.
And then since then, I do the natural competitions, right? I do physique bodybuilding. It's a little bit different. We wear like swimming trunks. And since then, I've 3 times, 3 different federations pro. So, and I compete against people my son's age. So I compete at 20-year-olds, and you know, I got this vegan tattoo on my up here, and I got it because I want the conversation. So every time I used to wear a vegan shirt, they used to always like, "You're vegan?" I'm like, "Yeah." Now, and I like to say, "No, I'm not vegan. I just like wearing vegan clothes." But as a joke, right? Even with the tattoo, "No, I'm not vegan. I just like vegan."
I just like that kind of tattoo, you know?
Right. So the thing about it is when they go, "Wow, you're dedicated to that diet." And I said, "Well, you know, vegan to me means something different.
Mm-hmm.
Vegan to me means unconditional love for all beings. How can that go away? It's not about dedicated to a diet. It's dedicated to being the most compassionate person I can be on this planet. And that crosses species. It crosses genders. It crosses colors. It crosses everything. See, these little boxes that we put ourselves in, that's the separation. That's why we fight against each other. Because my box doesn't match up to your box. And my box belief is counter to your box's belief. So we're going to have to fight about these beliefs that aren't really true. Mm. Right? So this is how we kill each other, not even knowing why we're doing it. Because I was born a Muslim and I was born a Christian. Both of these things were given to me. And now we're going at odds with each other because this belief that was given to me doesn't match up with the belief that was given to you. And we're going to kill each other over it.
Right.
And that's the crazy part. We're doing all this stuff because of the beliefs that we were given and not because of who we really are. Because when we realize who we really are, any leader, any person that came on this planet that really got it knows that all these things are fake. They know that all these things that separate us aren't even real, right? And that's how they can have such an impact on the planet. Like there's certain people that everybody goes, that person is just amazing. That person just brought with it. And they never question what religion they are. They never question what color they are. They never question what sex they are. They just know this person is an amazing light in this world, right? It's almost they transcend the boxes because they know who they are. They're accepted by everybody because they're shining, that they have that much God that they're giving out. It's like, I don't even like that, but I like that guy, right? I'm not even a Buddhist, but I love that guy.
Right.
I'm a Christian, but I love that guy, right? Or that woman or whoever it might be. There's just people that transcend those boxes. And that's what we need to do. And back in the day, I used to attract, everything is energy. So you're going to attract whatever is in your life. You're responsible for that. Whatever actions people have against you, you're responsible for that. Mm-hmm. Right? You have people in your circle that are backbiting, talking about you, treating you a certain way. You're 100% responsible for that. You have to understand that. Mm-hmm. So back in the day, everywhere I went, I would attract these people into my life. So if I was at church, I would attract that one dope dealer that was in church too.
Wow.
Or one person that wants to go out and drink afterwards and smoke, I would attract that person, right? So nowadays, my circle is people that want to help people heal. Right. People that want to change the neighborhood. And just, I can be anywhere and someone say, oh, you do that? Oh, I do that too. It's the law of attraction. If you don't think it's a law, it doesn't matter. It's still a law.
It's still a law. It's just like gravity. It's still a law.
It's still a law.
Yeah.
You're gonna get what you are.
Absolutely. And I love what you say about attracting who we are, because I know that when I was out just being just a bad person, and compared to my life today, it was like I always attracted people that wanted to get high, wanted to get drunk, wanted to cheat on their partners or their spouse, wanted to steal. And today it's like, that's not even in my scope of understanding. It doesn't show up. It's like people respect my relationship. They respect me because I respect me. So I love what you're saying about that, which actually leads into the question about your morning protocol. What is it that you do to start the foundation of your day so that when you go out into the world, that you are taking with you the energy of love, the energy that you are there to help heal people?
So there's two very important parts of the day, right? Your whole day is important, but before you go to bed, and then when you get up, right? So what I do, I'll start before I go to bed. Before I go to bed, I write in a gratitude journal, right? So whatever you want to give thanks for, 5 things to give thanks for. And then when we go to sleep, me and my wife put on a guided meditation. So as you're falling asleep, you're getting this repetitive message. And this is another way to change your program, right? Put on something before you go to sleep. And as you go into sleep, when you start to go into the different waves of consciousness, you're getting this recording in your head. And that's why, you know, so many people that fall asleep with the news on, they get up or can't sleep well because you're getting these messages, these crazy messages as you sleep. So gratitude journal, guided meditation when we go to sleep. Now let's keep that momentum. When you get up, gratitude, not within the journal, but just thank you. Give thanks for the night, for getting rest, for getting restored. And then I go into my meditation practice.
Nice.
So then I go into immediately, right? So now let's keep this trajectory. Let's keep it going, right? So guaranteed, this is what I'm going to do in the morning. Every single morning, I know how important it is. So I like to say meditation is connecting to God, however you view that, right? If you want to view it, you know who Alan Watts is.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So he got this, my favorite saying by him is, you can't get wet. The word water can't make you wet.
Right.
So God is just pointing to something. It's just pointing to something. All religions are pointing to the same thing, right? It's just a pointer. I don't have to make up what it's supposed to look like or what it's supposed to be, right? I could say higher self, source, God, the universe, whatever. It doesn't make a difference what you call it. But I connect to that every day. And when you do that and your mind starts to settle, you can hear the whispers behind that. And that's that GPS, that guidance, that inner guidance that we can hear when we're not so busy, when we're not so loud. But we have to quiet down to get that.
Nice.
I realize that now this is how my life started to change, because I started to listen to those things. The whispers started to get through past the noise. When you start to settle down, it's like meditation is like, if you continue to do meditation, it'd be like scooping up a thing of pond water, right? You know how pond water looks, dirty and all the moss and all the stuff that's in pond water, but you set it down and come back in a half hour. What does that pond water look like that's in that cup? It starts to settle. Things start to get clear. So when you do that, what happens is your life starts to change in ways that you would never, ever believe. And I'm glad that I didn't look at what it would do for you, because I would try to probably direct my life into matching that. But when things are happening to me now, I can look back or do some research and go, oh, okay, that's what happened. This is what's going on. So I suggest anybody that wants to take up a meditation practice to not look at what it's going to do for you, but just experience that real time.
I love that. I love that. Do you ever have days where you, I don't want to say forget, but you just, like, it doesn't become that important, so you let a day go by or another day? It's just like I run. And recently I had to have a small medical procedure. It was just a test that you have at my age. And so I had to do some prep work and everything. And so I couldn't run for a few days. And that first day that I got back into running, I really had to just put one foot in front of the other. And once I was running, it was like, oh, this is great. And I try to get in a few miles every day. And I figure, you know, God gave me this body that is doing some amazing things at my age. I want to keep doing these amazing things. I want to be one of those ladies in her 80s and 90s that people just go, holy heck. The woman that with the chef that you and what is her name? Babette. She is, what an amazing woman. She's 70 years old. She looks like she's in her 40s, and she's just spitfire. I love her. And, you know, I look at people like you doing what you're doing. And with that, do you ever forget? Does it become secondary and then you go, oops, I need to get right back into the practice?
So physically, I always take breaks, but meditation can be done in anywhere.
Okay.
Anywhere. So I'm going to give you a perfect example. This is how important I think it is to me. Okay. I got this app about over 4 years ago. And because I usually just do the meditation, I set my own timer and then I would just do it like that.
Right.
But 4 years ago, on social media, I seen this app and it's like Insight Timer. Oh, this is a way to time your meditations from an app. So I did that. And I didn't know it would, you know, if it recorded it and kept a record or a log of what your meditations were, right? But it did. It logs it all in. So I got this over 4 years ago, and I'm going to show you something real quick. You see what that says?
Yes.
You see how many days in a row?
Yes. Okay.
So that's 1,548 days, 4 years and so on. But that's the day I got the app.
Wow.
I have not used this app since the day I got this app. That's how important it is to me. Every day, it's like, do you want your day to be better?
Mm-hmm.
If you do, even if it's a hard time, that meditations sometimes feel hard and then sometimes they feel just super peaceful. But whatever it is, it's supposed to happen that day. However it happens, is there something you need to deal with, right? It's just what's coming up for you. So to be able to do that instead of just jumping up and moving off and holding this energy and being unconscious about how you feel, you're really dealing with it right away. You're dealing with it as soon as you get up and you understand, okay, this is what it is. Let me look deeper to see why I'm feeling this way and then go forward. So it's so important for me to check in.
Right.
They say meditation is, prayer is like talking to God. Meditation is like listening to God.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So let me check in today and see how I'm feeling, see how I'm doing, see what comes up. And then I can move in the best way after that.
I love it. I love it. And Monk, before I forget, how do people get in touch with you? What's your web address? And I'm sure all your your website, by the way, is beautiful. I went there and looked at it. I looked at your pictures on Instagram. If somebody wants to see just a rock star bodybuilder who's vegan, who's natural, who's doing it the right way, go look at your Instagram account. There's pictures of you all over the place. But how do they find you?
My website is www.monketernal.com. And then my Instagram, I just created for my book, Monk Coleman page on Instagram for my book. It's all going to be book related, but my regular page is monk_eternal.
Okay, excellent. And we'll make sure that people get the link to this. I'll put the Amazon link up. And I do encourage people, it's $10, well invested $10. I actually ordered it before it was even finished being published. And I heard you on another conversation on Jane Unchained's program, and you talked about your book. And while you're talking, I went over and I ordered it. And it's like, okay, because I'm an author, so I know what it's like to have people buy your book and really be impacted by it.
I need to get your book. You need to send me a link so I can get your book. What is it?
I will send you a copy I have 20 books, and I will send you a copy. Most of them are e-based, but I've got Power Up for Profits. I'm working on a new one. This just came to me the other day. I wrote one when I first went vegan. It was 3 months in. I had dropped 38 pounds. I had great energy. And so I wrote the Beginner's Guide to Plant-Based Eating. And I give that away to people in my Facebook group. But I thought, I want to write how I went from plant-based to being vegan, because when I first became plant-based, I didn't want to call myself a vegan because I thought you vegans were crazy. And now I'm a crazy vegan because somebody was telling me they were doing the keto diet. And I said, oh, you're doing the cruel. And they said they eat a lot of meat. I said, so you're doing the cruel diet. I said, no judgment, but you need to know. I think you need to do some research on where your meat is being sourced from, because you may decide never to eat meat again. And so I'm going to be rewriting that book and expanding it. But I will send you a copy when we get off this interview. I want your mailing address, because I'll send you an autographed copy. I just so appreciate. Yeah, I so appreciate what you're doing. Speaking of what you're doing, what are your plans for the future? Where do you see yourself going? And I know, in the big picture of things, you're letting it unfold, but you must have a vision of what you want to see happen in the world.
Yeah. So with this book, the reason why I created it, and it was created, it's like from a super inspired place. It just came to me. I never had any intentions on it. And I watched one video and I was like, these things that I wrote them down like a year before. And I'm like, I need to elaborate and make a book on this thing. So when I speak, I can give something tangible to somebody that can really help change their life. So that book I wrote from my heart, but it just like I was the medium. It just came through me, this book. Right? So I knew it was from a higher or elevated place. But the goal of that was to be able to get this into institutions, juvenile, rehabs, prisons. And it's for everybody, but people that are really having a tough time. trying to figure this thing out, trying to find out what they're here for. I believe if you take these steps, and some people can be, I like take a couple of them and say, I need to work on this part. You can take a couple different ones. I need to work on this part. Some people like, I need to work on all this, right? But if you really take this as a guide and something you can have close to you, mark it all up and say, this is what I need to work on, and keep it in conscious awareness, then you can really change your life. And the personal part I put in there, that wasn't even supposed to be in there. So I made this book and I was getting ready to start my second book. So the publisher that I was working with, I said, oh, I've already started my second book. And I started reading him, what you read my story, that my story part. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you have to put this in this one.
Absolutely.
Because you have to show them that you didn't come from flowers and daisies and sunshine, right? Like, it's easy to give somebody these things to do when you didn't have a struggle, but they need to identify with the author and the struggle that came with it and why you even wanted to write these words in the first place.
Absolutely. And your publisher is right, because when people can see the journey that we've been on, and, there's people that when they hear that I'm sober for 37 years, they're like, oh, you couldn't have been that bad. It's like, oh, you have no idea. You have no idea. And so I think telling your story is so important. And it's proof that anybody can come from wherever they're at, and they can change their life. They can make a conscious choice day by day to do better things. And what I'm going to encourage people to do, and it came to me, this was a download as you were talking, when you said you want this book to get into institutions, you want people to have access to this book. I'm going to invite people to go to Amazon and buy 10 copies. Go to Amazon, buy 10 copies, and take them down to your local shelter. I did that with one of my books, where it was called Law of Achievement. And it was a spiritual look at achievement, because coming from a place where literally I couldn't get a job, I was unemployable, to being a super high performer because I chased after the dream. And the reality is the chasing was not what I needed to do. So I went to a women's shelter, and I gave, because I had been in women's shelters before, and I gave boxes and boxes and boxes of that book away, and just hoping that it would help somebody. So I'm going to encourage people, buy 10 copies of Love Over Fear by Monk Coleman, and take them down to a shelter, take them down to the local jail, take them somewhere that somebody can benefit, because this is a great resource that has nice bite-sized pieces of wisdom that will change their life when they implement it. So Monk, I just want to say, I so appreciate, you are just such a blessing. I wish you the very best in life. Anything I can do to help move your message forward, I will be happy to do it. In closing, what are your final thoughts?
Oh.
Love is currency.
That's it. We got to spend it. We got to circulate this currency. That's what it's all about. And that's, my wife likes to call me a professional spreader of love. And that's what it's all about. Find the love that's in you and give it away. That's what we got to do. And if we do that, like I said, no matter the question, love is always the answer.
Absolutely.
Do.
Absolutely. And again, this is Kathleen Gage with Plant-Based Eating for Health. I've been talking with Monk Coleman, who is the author of Love Over Fear. I encourage you to visit his website. And again, your website is?
www.monketernal.com.
monketernal.com. We'll put that in the show notes. This has truly been a gift. Thank you so much for your time, Monk. And for the people who have listened and watched, thank you. Go out, spread love, and be the change that you want to see happen. Have a great day.
Thank you for your commitment to an ethical life through plant-based food choices. The kind of choices that are kind to your body, the environment, and most of all, animals. Be sure to leave a review and rating of the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show.